Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to the Behind the Well Show. Your host, Roger Abel. I'm joined today in studio with Jonas Everett. He's been on a couple episodes in the past. We want to congratulate Elias. He had a little baby boy, Bryce, over the weekend. So we've got a special guest, Jonas. How are you today, bud?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back on this popular podcast that I've been hearing all about, watching several of the shows, waiting for the call again to be invited back. So we need to have Elias's family, that family to keep growing, Elias to keep having kids, so I can come back here and hang out with you.
Whether Elias knows it or not, but 3's the game changer. That's his third. So we'll see what he has to say about that when he gets back into the office. But one thing I always appreciate about having you on the show, Jonas, is you're one of the most prepared people that either show up to our radio show or come in this podcast. So I'm actually really interested to see what you have to say today. And a couple of things we're going to talk about on the show, and we're going to get to, but we're going to talk about how to kind of maximize retirement savings and 6 tips to actually do that. But before we get to there, Warren Buffett is probably one of your favorite people. Your second favorite is Jack Bogle. And what's interesting is there was an article that came out that said Warren Buffett, Jack Bogle, and financial advisors all agree when stocks are down, don't watch the market too closely.
And it's tough. It's tough not to watch your retirement accounts, or at least look at it when you know that we're in a downturn like this. But yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett is probably considered the greatest investor of all time. And Roger, you get to hear quite a bit of his quotes. But Jack Bogle, I consider Jack Bogle the greatest financial advisor of all time. And he actually wasn't an advisor, but if you look at the advice that Jack gave about the S&P 500, you probably have more people in the S&P 500 than they do in Warren Buffett's investment or individual investments. That's just because the share price of Warren Buffett's investment is pretty high. And so you have Jack Bogle here that basically invented the index fund. And he has a couple of quotes that I wrote down here somewhere with all my notes. But one of the things when you're in a downturn, Jack Bogle said, if you have trouble imagining a 20% loss in the stock market, you shouldn't be in stocks. And he said that right out of the gate. But what I kind of like about Jack Bogle and the index style of investing is Jack always said, and you see this, Roger, you see this in a bull market. You saw this up until December of last year, where people were actually trying to pick the needle in the haystack. They were making returns on their 401k. They were making returns on everything. So they tried to pick the needle in the haystack. Now that I'm making money, I'm going to find that needle in the haystack. Well, Jack Bogle always said, just buy the haystack. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't think that stock picking is easy. Just buy the haystack. And if you look at the downturn now that we're having, what's especially difficult about this is the financial media talks to everybody as if they're day traders, and they should be making 3 or 4 trades a day. And you just don't have to do that if you're diversified. If you may have some of your money in an index fund, you should be looking at maybe taking advantage of this downturn if you have a nice time horizon ahead of you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple key takeaways I want to hit on there. And one is, if you think about where a vast majority of the investment dollars are for the average saver, it's in their qualified retirement plan. And that S&P 500 index fund is almost an option in about every plan. There's very few plans where that's not an option. Number 2, you're right. The markets are volatile, and we as financial advisors all agree that, if you let time work on your side, just like Jack Bogle will tell you, you're going to get your money cut in half, but it's going to go up over time. So I think it's great, though, that we all kind of agree that, staying the course is the best course of action. I know my most successful customers right now literally are coming in for their review and they're like, I don't even want to look at it.
Right.
Because I haven't been looking at it. It's not because we're upset. It's because I know to exhibit good investor behavior is just to not look at it. And then I have the individual clients who look at it every day, and they're always the ones that are a little bit more frazzled. And that's okay. That's their personality. It's okay to get frustrated with it. Everybody does. I mean, I think people forget that we have money invested too, and we still have those same feelings and emotions. We're just armed with all the firepower of what we should be doing to make things work. As you said, if you have some extra money, maybe it's time to start deploying extra money. I know you refer to that as your spare tire, but I've deployed personally money in the last 3 weeks. I had some extra cash. I had a spare tire that I needed to do something with. I didn't use all my spare tires.
Right.
But I used one.
And if I would say too, for those, investors that are listening to this podcast, congratulations, on trying to stay educated. And if you haven't changed any of your systematic programs that you're purchasing, you might be buying, index funds and a company sponsored 401k right now. If you haven't called your plan and you haven't went to cash, congratulations, because you're actually, 10 years from now, you have to think that you were bargain hunting in 2022. Sorry, Roger, I kind of stole your thunder there. But
that's what you hit on some in 10 years. In 10 years, your personal self in 10 years is going to look back and be like, I'm really happy I either did what I did or I'm really upset I did what I did. That's what you're going to say. And more times than not, the person that either held on to their investments or added to them are going to say, hey, I'm really happy with what I did. I have situations where individuals I know, they sold their funds in 2008 and 2009. None of them today are saying, I'm happy I sold my investment then.
I'm glad you brought that period of time up, because you're looking at one of the things that I ask new people. We get a lot of new people because of the AM 600 radio show, and we have new appointments, and I ask them on the first meeting, what'd you do in 08? What'd you do with your accounts in 08? And the answer I'm looking for is nothing. I just kept adding to my 401k. And I just said, do you realize what you just did? It's a great success of what you did. That market went down 57% over a 500 business day adventure, basically crash. And you kept your job, you kept working, you kept adding to your company retirement plan. Congratulations. I mean, you just whatever formula for investing, they got an A+ by doing that. But that's what I ask people. What'd you do in 08? The new people that come into the office.
So think about it. That was 500 days. We're only like 250 days into this.
Right.
I mean, so I think we've been talking on this show about, hey, how do we set expectations for people? Because if we look at the most recent downturn, that would have been prior to current, would have been COVID. That's unlike any other downturn recovery that we've ever seen. That lasted like 90 days.
34 days, actually.
I mean, it's just absolutely
before you could even wake up, right?
Well, think about it. People didn't have to see 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. Now they're going to get their 9th statement in a row where their investments are down from the beginning of the year, and that starts to erode and wear on people.
Right.
And I think it's important for people to understand why things are happening. I mean, what's the cause and effect? And in my opinion, whether this is right or wrong, a lot of this, the majority of this is all based around inflation. And inflation has gotten to a 40-year highs. And I think people don't understand why the market goes down when interest rates are rising this rapidly. And the easiest thing to think about is when the 2-year Treasury paid, let's say the 2-year Treasury pays 1%. Well, that's not too exciting. Today, the 2-year Treasury is paying almost 4%. So you could go buy a two-year Treasury, pay 4%, and wait for 2 years. You're going to make 4% each year. That's the best fixed interest rate we've seen in a very long time. And when interest rates go up, because the 4% is more attractive, People pull money out of the market. That's one of the reasons the market's down. It's that simple. And I was listening to a few other publications the past few days, and there's really two major things outside of inflation that are the big question marks in this economy. And one is China. People don't realize that China's still in a zero COVID policy, meaning they have no tolerance for COVID. They're still shut down. And two is the war in Russia. And what do you think would happen to the market if China went off a zero COVID policy and opened back up, or the war in Russia came to an end? What's going to happen to the market? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think it's going to go up.
So the question becomes, if you were to sell your investments today and that happened tomorrow, how would you feel? You'd feel horrible.
Right.
And that's why we always talk about this long-term vision of keeping your investments, because we don't really know what's going to happen.
Well, you're exactly right, Roger. I like what you said that, I almost blame our financial industry for a lot of this, a lot of the volatility, because you mentioned that institutions or people will go from stocks to that 2-year treasury that's paying 4%. I don't think our customers will, but I think the financial industry will. I think any companies outside of Premier Investments are trying to time the market, and we get the data on how individual investors don't get the returns. I'm not quite sure I believe that data anymore, because I've been doing this going on 30 years next year. And I've talked to individual investors, as well as you have the whole way. And I haven't met too many people, maybe one, Roger, out of 20 that has gotten out of the market, and we get the data all the time that individual investors, they're going to cash. I think individual investors deserve more credit, because I don't think that they're going to cash, or at least I haven't seen it, and I didn't even see it in 2008. I saw quite a bit of it during the 9/11 days. But what's your thoughts on that, about all the financial institutions in the world trying to time the market, and then we have individual investors that we're working with that are trying to stay the course and do what they can?
Well, no, you hit it on the head earlier in the show. You just said all the financial media is geared towards the trader mentality, not the investor mentality. Right. And what I appreciate is they will have financial advisors on there, and they'll preface and say, hey, if you're a long-term investor, then you can ignore this.
Right.
And I guess that there's a portion of our industry that I guess they think it's their job to be smarter than everybody else, even though a lot of the times it doesn't work out for them. The silver lining with inflation, though, is it's going to offer people the ability to go get a stable yield, like a fair yield again. I mean, for how long have you been looking at CD rates that are, less than 1%? It just wasn't even fair to our clients who need income. I mean, we're going to be able to create portfolios that drive more income that people need. And I think, with this high inflation that we're seeing, there's some creep people might not even be thinking about. And that's that with soaring prices and inflation, the IRS builds in inflation measures into the tax code. What I mean by that is they may increase contribution limits for people. So that's a good thing. Think about if the IRS said, hey, we're going to take the Roth IRA from $6,000 to $7,000, let's say, for under 55. They're helping individuals exhibit good investor behavior. And I think some of those things that we're going to talk about might actually be really good for the average, not even the average, just any person that's contributing to a workplace retirement plan.
Right. And we'll jump into that. A couple more Jack Bogle quotes. You're going to love this last one, Roger. But my favorite is investor mistakes are behaviors. He said that the mistakes investors make is they think that when the market is going up, it's going to go up forever. We've said this a long time. And he said that investors think when the market's going down that it's going to go down forever. So Jack Bogle's kind of warning against, along with the other, really smart guys and gals of the world, that all or nothing thinking doesn't help you at all when you're an investor or any fashion of life. It's like when you try to argue with your wife about something, and she says, "Oh, I'm always wrong about everything." She'll shut you down. She won. And so all or nothing thinking as an investor, the markets go up and go down.
It's good insight. And I know you always do a lot of research on Jack Bogle and Warren Buffett. In fact, we used to have the quiz or the
$5 jar.
The trivia. We had the trivia on the radio show. And if Jonas mentioned Warren Buffett during the trivia, I think there was like some penalty for you or something.
Oh, I got 3 Warren Buffett quotes, and then we'll talk about which are timely in a down market. But the last one's my favorite. But the first one is probably hits home. The 10 years, 10 seconds quote. If you're not willing to own a company for 10 years, you shouldn't own it for 10 seconds. How about a fund? Let's say instead of a company, let's just say call that a fund. But Warren Buffett's training, his original mentor Benjamin Graham always mentioned that look at the stock market as a maniac business partner that's trying to make you a deal every day that walks into your office or your home office or your business room or wherever you have the computer. So the stock market, whenever you turn it on, it's a maniac and it's trying to make you a deal to either buy or sell. You don't have to do either. And we were always taught buy low and sell high. And my favorite quote is, this kind of hits home for me because I don't need a lot of money to satisfy my lifestyle in general. I don't need a lot of money. So the investing I'm doing is kind of hits home with this Warren Buffett quote. Someone is sitting in the shade of a tree today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. So I'm investing just so, my kids will be better off and my wife won't, if anything happens to me, my wife won't have to marry the first guy that looks like Chachi and drive off in a Camaro to Las Vegas or anything like that. So
you made a good point about owning a fund for 10 years. It's good advice because here's what happens. People go look at a fund and they try to get really too cute with this stuff. If you think about a mutual fund, you can be pretty vanilla here. You can own the S&P 500, a growth fund, a growth and income, an international, aggressive growth, and you can own that for 10 years. But if you start to buy these little niche funds, you'll never own them for 10 years. And in essence, what you're saying is you're trying to time the market in a different manner, which maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you won't.
Right.
And the good news about a fund, though, is most of them you could own for 10 years. There's some really risky ones out there maybe you wouldn't want to, but most funds you'd buy, you could own for 10 years. But I think that's a good point. If you can't own for 10 years, don't own it at all. So, Jonas, let's talk about the 6 tips to maximize retirement savings. But part of this is there were a couple surveys that came out. Principal had their annual Super Savers survey that came out, and Go Banking also did a savings survey. And here's what's interesting, and it's a little bit of what people expect to do versus what really happens. And what we all say we're going to do and what we do, they typically differ quite a bit because people, on a 1-year period of time kind of set out this rosy outlook of everything. And then something happens, you need a car or a dishwasher goes out or something happens and there's an event. But on the Principal's annual Super Saver survey, 59% of people said they are planning to save more than $20,000 this year, which for me was shocking because I know what people typically save and how much they have saved. And if everybody was saving $20,000, 60% of the people were saving $20,000 a year, we wouldn't have the retirement problems that we do today.
Right.
82% of respondents are confident they can endure a recession, which I think is good. Like people feel like they put themselves in a better position. And, maybe COVID was a little bit of a wake-up call for people saying, hey, I've heard about having an emergency account and I need to have a few months in there. But COVID happened and maybe look, I really need to get diligent about having this emergency fund because if 82% of people think they can make it through a recession, I think that's a high number. I would think pre-COVID, if you told someone there's a recession, 82% of the people aren't saying I'll be okay. And 67% of respondents said they'd rather make a lifestyle change over changes to their investments to deal with inflation, which I think is really good too. They're basically saying, I'll give up Starbucks to keep my Roth IRA going. But here's the reality. I don't think they'll really do that. And we've talked about this on a radio show. You're starting to see price of things go up. We have massive inflation. We've started to see credit card balances rise. Well, why? Because people aren't willing to give up their lifestyle. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Jonas?
Well, yeah, I just pictured when we were on the radio, and you and our host Doug Wagner brought up that picture of the young gal, working gal. She's got the $8 Starbucks, she's got the $1,500 computer, and she's got the $300 Ray-Bans, and she's like tweeting something about like student loan forgiveness or something like that. But I really like that. This reminds me of like the overconfidence bias. You know, when you go out driving today, guess who the best driver on the road is?
Me?
Yeah, you're always the best driver on the road. So, yeah, the reality is that we have this 50-50 thing going on in the country, and that's the next part where you really have 50% of the people that really can't get their hands on, $5,000 or $10,000 and savings, and it's not entirely their fault, either. And then you have the other 50% that seem to be a good job saving. But the reality, the Go Banking Rate reality check is 36% of respondents have less than $10,000 saved. I'm going to jump back up to the lifestyle. I love the fact that almost 7 out of 10 are saying I'm going to change something in my lifestyle with this inflation coming up, and I don't want to change my investments. I love that, and I think that the more that people understand that maybe they can't keep up with the Joneses as much as they could, or maybe they don't even want to. And this morning I went closet shopping. And we have the high school that the kids go to, there's a food pantry and there's a clothes pantry. And I'm like, man, I'm getting rid of all of my clothes. I'm not a big clothes person. I have so many clothes from Father's Day and Christmases and birthdays. I have so many polos like this that I'm going to get rid of the ones that I don't own. So I think going forward, if people just identify what they like to spend their money on, maybe it's ski trips and they're not car people. Maybe it's just home repairs for the next 5 years. I mean, there's everybody's different with their lifestyle investments. But I think if people identify the fact that they really, with inflation, it's going to be hard for anybody to go out and buy everything new again, like the good old days. Maybe when you got your first promotion, you got new clothes and a new car and a new house, and that's kind of, for me, that's kind of keeping up with the Joneses. If people just forget about the Joneses and just look at the mirror and say, hey, what do I like to do? What's my lifestyle? Is it fishing, or is it anything? Am I a car person? Am I a vacation person? Do I just want to go on one awesome vacation a year and I really don't care about anything else? So it was good to hear that people are looking at their lifestyles a little bit more, Roger.
Well, I hope they actually do that, but I think the reality is they won't. So here's what's really interesting. So 59% of the respondents said they're going to save more than $20,000. But 63% of people have less than $50,000 saved. So I'm trying to figure out how those numbers work. And unfortunately, most people are just ill prepared for retirement. 11% of Americans, 11% are saving between 10 and 20% for retirement. Yeah. Like, that's not going to cut it. And, if you're behind, you can go to btwellshow.com. You can click start here, get an advisor. We'll help you get on the right track. But 11% of the people saving 10 to 20% is not going to cut it for retirement. And so here's 6 tips how to maximize your retirement savings. And the first thing we talk about with people is just be putting away 10% of what you make. It's the easiest thing to do. So think about most employers. Most employers are offering, if they have a 401k, between 3 and 6% in a match. Not all do, but typically you'll see between 3 and a 6% match. So if you're making $100,000 and you put 10% away, that's 10,000 plus, let's say they give 6, that's 16,000 bucks a year. That's pretty darn good. And then you get your wife to do that, making 100,000. You guys are putting away 32,000. You'll be in good shape. So the first tip is make sure you're putting at least 10% of your money away. And I know there's other people who say, well, don't put any money away until you have all your debt paid off. Unfortunately, here's the problem with that advice. And I think it's good advice to be out of debt. Most people are going to spend most of their life in debt. And then that means you'll never save. And I get it. The goal is to get people out of debt. Most people won't. So we need to counsel people on how do we get a large retirement nest egg.
I agree, Roger. And then you're missing out on Einstein's number one wonder of the world, right? Compound interest. The sooner you get started, everybody's going to have debt up into a certain point.
Since we talked about Warren Buffett, he had a great clip about the best investment you could make. And while I want people to be saving 10% of their money in their 401k, if you have credit card debt, you got to knock it out. And Warren Buffett, I watched a whole video on this. Someone asked Warren Buffett, what's the best investment? He said, pay off your high interest rate credit cards. And he talked about why. He said, even if you're paying 12%, there's no investment that Warren Buffett can find that's going to pay him 12% year in and year out. So pay off your credit cards before you save the 10%. But after that, you got to start saving your money for retirement.
Oh, absolutely. And, this is a tough thing. You also, with the new inflation that we have, you have to, the second tip to maximize your retirement savings is not a retirement savings at all. You need to maximize you need to have a savings account that is adjusted for inflation. We used to always recommend, Roger, 6 to 9 months of living expenses. Well, with COVID coming out a couple of years ago and people are still getting COVID today and we have inflation now, we'd like to have people right around 9 to 12 months of living expenses in just a savings account, and that's one of those things just in case you get sick or you can't go to work and you can't put money in for your retirement, you have something to fall back on so you don't have to touch your retirement.
That's exactly why it helps maximize. Because if you don't have this, where's the first place you're going to go and you need money after you max out your credit card?
401k loan.
401k loan.
Yep.
And then you're killing your nest egg. 3, I'm going to let you hit this one, Jonas, because you're very, very good at this. I'm going to let you roll with number 3.
Yeah, live below your means. And, I would say kind of the opposite of that. Just identify what you like to spend money on. I'll give you an example. I have one customer. He's retired. And I talked to him, I said, what are you going to, or he was getting ready for retirement. It was like a month away. And I said, okay, we need to visualize over the next couple of months what you're going to be doing. I said, number 1, are you a state trotter? Are you not going to be in Iowa, or are you going to get an RV? Because I have customers like that one's going to be in Tennessee and North Carolina this week. Are you a snowbird? You don't want to handle the Iowa winters. You want to go down and you want to go to Florida or Texas. And then are you a gigger? Do you want to get a part-time job? Do you want to? And he stopped me right there and he said, I don't like fishing. I'd rather throw a pebble in the pond. I don't like going out of the state of Iowa. I'm gonna get a part-time job driving cars around from dealership to dealership so I can have coffee with new people. And he stopped me right there. And that's one of the things that with his lifestyle, he doesn't have to worry about paying for an expensive vacation or a vacation home or an expensive RV. He doesn't have to worry about that. He's really identified what type of person he is. And this is kind of hilarious. He figured out what date he could or when he was eligible to start another 401k. So this is one of those super savers that he's got a part-time job and he wants to start another 401k. So he's done a great job of identifying, and it really doesn't have anything to do with budgets. He's just identified what type of a person he wants to be in retirement.
4, pay your credit card balance off each month. Ideally, don't even use the credit card, but if you do use it, like, my wife called in an order for something today and she used the credit card. I don't want to get my debit card out over the phone to people. If you struggle paying this off each month, you can pay it any time. So I go in weekly, and then every week I just pay it each week. Well, why? Because it's a lot smaller on a weekly basis than it is on a monthly basis. And people look at it differently. When, if you went out and put $1,500 in your credit card and you did it $300 each week, you'd feel like you were just doing $300 each week. But when there's $1,200 or $1,500 at the end of the month, you're like, man, that's a bigger number. And what happens? Inevitably, people are just like, I'll just pay whatever the minimum is, or $200 because I have something else I want to do. So pay your credit card balance off each month. Otherwise, you're literally just putting yourself backwards. You're going to be, especially now. I mean, credit card rates are in the 20s now. They're 20% on a credit card. You think about that. Someone has 10,000 credit cards. They're paying $2,000 a year to buy a bunch of stuff they probably don't need.
I love it, right? I mean, you said that once a week, and that reminded me of the old biweekly mortgages. How people can, that's just a mental, kind of a mental trick that people can play with themselves, and basically just say on Monday, every Monday morning, I'm gonna pay the credit card off. Number 5, we're all about education and inspiration. Just make a lifelong commitment to expanding your financial literacy. Take an online course. I have my kids in finance class right now in high school, and I have to pay them a Super Mario bonus just to take the class. At the end of the class, they get a nice bonus. But get familiar with the terms. Don't try to be an expert, but keep your financial literacy up there and get as educated as you can.
And number 6, and we're dealing with this right now, but markets are going to go up. They're going to go down, but focus on the long term. And really the best way to focus on the long term, and we talk about it on this show almost every single time, but it's setting out what your goals, your priorities are, and creating a plan, whether it's our one-page vision document or a full financial plan. You can go to our website at btwellshow.com, click Get Started. We'll help you get started on the plan, but that's the number one way to deal with market volatility. And here's why I say that. People that haven't done a plan come in and they always ask, should I go to cash? Should I be invested differently? And my answer is, I don't know yet. But by creating a financial plan, we can get somebody to their ideal asset allocation, meaning maybe it's 70% stocks or 60% stocks. When I can show somebody that the allocation that is ideal for you, 70% stocks, their ability to manage market downturns is significantly better because they've given purpose to their investing. It's not just, well, this is what year I'm going to retire, so this is the fund I pick. We are giving purpose to why they're invested the way they are versus just kind of doing a willy-nilly investment allocation.
Yeah, a lot of times up until December of last year, they really didn't have to do any planning. Now's the time to do planning and just see if you're. We're looking at a lot of portfolios, or I am, that are just kind of the people think they're diversified and they're not. So this is the time to do a plan.
I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. Jonas, thank you for being on.
Roger.
You're probably going to be on a couple of weeks because I try to convince Elias to keep things nice at home. He probably needs to take a week or two off and help out a little bit. But with that said, if anybody's looking for help, you can go to btwellshow.com, click Get Started, and we'll get someone in touch to you. Thanks for listening.